All right, picture this. You're out there on the open road, sun coming up, that rig just humming along. There's really nothing like that feeling of independence, is there?
No, it's unique. Definitely unique to trucking.
But, even with that freedom, there's always this buzz, this constant background noise of change, new tech popping up, new rules coming down from Washington, rumors flying everywhere.
It's a lot. It really is a lot to keep track of. Sometimes it feels like the whole landscape is shifting under your wheels.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we're doing this deep dive today. We want to cut through all that noise.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to unpack how these, external forces and even internal company decisions are really shaping the industry and hitting you, the driver, where it matters.
We're talking tech, policy shifts, and maybe most importantly, some solid strategies for you to actually thrive through all this change.
Yeah, so our mission today really is to give you the clear facts. We've been digging into some great stuff from Truckers VA and lifesatrucker.com, pulling out the key insights.
We want to connect the dots for you, show you the different angles. Like Hervey from Life as a Trucker always says, you got to see the road ahead from all sides. Empower you to navigate this on your own terms.
Okay, so if we're talking about constant change, technology is usually right there at the front, isn't it? Let's start with this tech revolution rolling in. First up, dynamic LTL planning.
Right?
Now, I know LTL's study might sound kind of dry, but stick with us. This could make less than truckload shipping smarter, faster, maybe even pay better for you.
It's really fascinating how fast this stuff is moving, from just an idea to actually being implemented. And it really forces drivers to think differently, not just about what they do, but how they do it.
So what is dynamic LTL planning in plain English?
Basically, it's using real-time data feeds, AI, machine learning, all that jazz, to make LTL routes way more efficient. Think about routes adjusting literally on the fly.
On the fly based on what, like traffic?
Yeah, live traffic, sudden weather changes, how dense the load actually is, even spikes in customer demand. The system sees it and recalculates.
Okay, so it's kind of like an AI dispatcher then. What's the real day-to-day impact going to be, let's say, for a company driver? Does it actually mean more reliable home time, or is that just, talk?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The promise for company drivers is definitely fewer wasted miles, smarter pickups, more efficient drop-offs.
Ah.
And the theory is, yes, that this optimization could lead to more predictable routes and so potentially more consistent home time because the system is trying to max out efficiency.
Okay, potentially. And for owner-operators?
For owner-ops, it might mean chances for better per-mile rates when demand surges in certain lanes. That dynamic pricing model, that's a definite potential plus.
So that sounds pretty powerful, but okay, if AI is crunching data to fill trailers faster, avoiding those half-empty hauls, does that mean drivers end up with more mixed loads, more complex stops?
It could, yeah. More mixed loads are possible.
Yeah.
But the bigger thing here isn't just the route optimization itself, it's how your value as a driver might shift. It becomes less about just the driving and more about mastering these tools.
Oh.
Using the AI, understanding the suggestions, figuring out what's real efficiency versus just like corporate oversight. Adapting your bidding if you're an owner-op.
Right. And you mentioned bidding. Does this open things up more for platforms like Uber Freight or Convoy? More dynamic LTL options there.
It certainly seems like it could. Maybe cutting out some middlemen, letting drivers bid more directly in real time based on that AI data.
So, okay, the upsides. Better routes, maybe more pay for hot lanes. But the downsides, always got to look at those. More tech watching you, maybe feeling like micromanagement.
Absolutely. And, an AI dispatcher doesn't always get the human side, needing a break, a sudden issue on the road.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There's definitely pressure to adapt, or like the source said, you could kind of get left behind.
So who does this favor?
It seems to favor the drivers who are nimble, the ones who stay informed, the hustlers, you could say. The advice is really clear. Stay up on the LTL tools, watch the rate trends, and figure out how to make this AI work for you, not against you.
Makes sense. And it's not just rail planning, right? This tech wave is hitting fleet safety too. What else should drivers be aware of?
Oh yeah, lots happening in safety tech. Think about digital cargo straps.
Digital straps, what do they do?
Remember messing with those old ratchet straps, cranking them down, then wondering if they loosened up later?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
These new ones have sensors built right in. They monitor the tension constantly. If the load shifts or a strap loosens, bang, you get an alert on your phone or dash.
Wow, okay, that's actually pretty cool. Fewer lost loads, fewer DOT hassles, less worrying.
Exactly. Peace of mind, really.
And what about autonomous trucks? We keep hearing about them, especially for LTL. How real is that right now?
It's happening, but let's be clear. Companies like Aurora, Kodiak, they are running trucks with autonomous capabilities, steering, braking, staying in lane,
Right.
but mostly on fixed, predictable routes, and almost always with a safety driver behind the wheel or remote monitoring. They're not replacing OTR drivers wholesale right now. It's more about testing, gathering data, proving the concept in limited ways.
Okay, so something to watch, but maybe not an immediate job threat for most OTR folks. What about tech that helps the driver right now, like that dynamic steering?
Yeah, dynamic steering systems. These are pretty neat. They use sensors to adjust the steering feel based on speed, road conditions, even the load weight.
So less fighting the wheel.
Exactly. Less white-knuckling it in crosswinds or on rough roads. It genuinely reduces arm and shoulder fatigue, saves your body, makes driving less stressful, which also means less driver fatigue overall and potentially fewer accidents.
That sounds like a real benefit. Any other bonus tech coming down the pike?
Yeah, there's a bunch. Wearable devices, tracking fatigue signs, maybe even microsleeps, AI dash cams that are getting smarter, not just recording, but maybe alerting you before you make a risky move. Even sensors that monitor brake health in real time, catching issues early.
It's amazing how fast this is all developing. But you hear drivers talk, and there's always that concern, right? All this tech. How does it really change the day-to-day? Is it helping me or just helping the company watch me?
That's the core tension, absolutely. Micromanagement worries, data being used against drivers, fears about automation lowering pay.
Hmm.
These are all valid concerns people raise.
Mm-hmm.
And the sources really hit on this. The key takeaway seems to be that the real win happens when drivers, not just the companies, actually benefit from all this innovation.
So it comes back to the driver again. How can you leverage it, learn it, use it to your advantage instead of, letting it just happen to you?
Precisely. Taking control of the tools, not being controlled by them.
That's a great point. And speaking of taking control and maybe filtering out some noise, let's shift gears to navigating the industry landscape policies and pitfalls. We got to talk about that rumor about older drivers, the one about banning drivers over 70.
Oh boy, yeah. This is where sorting fact from fiction gets really important. There's been a ton of chatter online, social media mostly, claiming the DOT is going to ban truckers over 70, force retirement, all sorts of stuff.
Sounds pretty scary if you're an experienced driver nearing that age, right? Like your career has an expiration date.
Totally. But here's the bottom line. It's completely false. Just not true.
Okay, so what's the actual rule?
The sources are crystal clear on this. There is no upper age limit for holding a CDL, period. The rule, which has been around for ages, is that all commercial drivers have to pass a DOT physical exam every 2 years.
Right, the med cert.
Exactly. Now, if you're over 65, your doctor might require it annually depending on your health conditions, but that's about ensuring safety on the road. It's not age discrimination. The FMCSA is firm. Fitness to drive is about health, not how many birthdays you've had.
So why did this rumor spread so fast then?
Well, a few things probably fed into it. We do have more older, experienced drivers on the road now, which is great. Also, sadly, some drivers do feel discriminated against by certain companies as they get older. And let's be honest, drivers are kind of tired of new regulations constantly hitting them.
Yeah, red fatigue is real.
So when a rumor like this pops up online, even if it's totally baseless, it can kind of tap into those existing frustrations and feel believable to some folks. That's why checking reliable sources is so critical.
Absolutely crucial. So, okay, no ban. But should older drivers expect anything different at their medical exams?
They might face a bit more scrutiny. Yeah, that's fair to say. Maybe more frequent checks if they have certain conditions, maybe additional tests for things like sleep apnea or heart issues, closer looks at medication interactions, eyesight, that kind of thing. But again, this isn't new policy, and it doesn't mean automatic disqualification at age 70 or any other age. The real takeaway for drivers is don't stress about the age number. Focus on your health.
Right. Age ain't the issue, health is.
Exactly. If you're 72 and fit as a fiddle, keep on trucking. But if your health starts slipping, that's what could affect your medical card, regardless of age. Be proactive about staying healthy.
That's solid advice. Okay, sticking with policy. Let's talk about stuff coming out of Washington that hits the wallet directly. New transportation security policies, tariff talk. How does that stuff trickle down to the driver?
Well, it really shows how these big macro-level decisions, things that seem distant, actually have very direct impacts on your daily operations and your bottom line.
Like what specifically?
So the government's tightening up security around transportation, citing national resilience. Practically, that means things like tougher border inspections, maybe more regulations on imported tech that goes into trucks or logistics sensors, cameras, that sort of thing. New security checks at ports and rail yards, too.
And for the driver on the ground, that translates to
Potentially slower cargo processing, delays getting loaded or unloaded, especially with imports. Maybe more pressure shifts onto domestic carriers if imports get held up. If you've noticed things seem slower or load boards look a bit weird sometimes, this could be part of why.
okay. And then there's the tariff situation. Are those Trump-era tariffs coming back?
Some were never fully removed, and yeah, there's talk of keeping them or even expanding them, particularly on goods from China, electronics, vehicle parts, batteries,
Yeah.
stuff that's crucial for trucking.
Right, so parts costs could go up. But what else? How does that reshape things for a driver?
It's not just about the cost of a new part, though that's part of it. It's about how companies react. These tariffs can literally redraw the freight map. Companies might shift where they source parts from or where their goods enter the country, maybe shifting from West Coast ports towards Mexico, for instance.
Ah, so it reshuffles supply chains.
Exactly. Which means it reshuffles lanes and load demand for you. Smart drivers, the sources suggest, aren't just reacting to rate changes day to day. They're actually looking ahead, trying to understand how these trade policies might shift freight flows before it fully hits the market.
So even if you never haul across a border, this stuff impacts the freight available domestically and the cost of keeping your rig running.
Absolutely. It all connects.
So what are the proactive drivers doing about it?
They're adapting. Owner-operators might be diversifying the types of freight they haul, watching market trends like a hawk. Fleet managers are probably checking their part suppliers, maybe locking in prices. And the tech-savvy ones, they might even be using AI tools to track trade news and adjust their strategies accordingly.
The lesson being, if it affects trade, it affects freight. If freight changes, it affects you.
Simple as that.
Okay, one more policy-related item that gives us a peek into the future. The U.S. Postal Service EV fleet. What's the story there?
Right, so the USPS committed to buying a massive fleet of electric vehicles, over 66,000 of them. There was a political move. Senate Republicans tried to block the funding, but it failed, mainly because canceling the contracts would have cost taxpayers something like $1.5 billion in fees.
Yeah.
So the EVs are rolling forward.
So, okay, it's the post office. Why should a long-haul trucker care about mail trucks going electric? Are EVs coming for the big rigs next?
It's not about Class 8s going electric overnight. Not yet, anyway. But it's a huge real-world test case. It's a preview of how electrification will likely roll out, starting with government fleets, local delivery routes, places where the routes are predictable and charging infrastructure is easier to manage.
So it shows the direction things are heading.
Exactly. It highlights the balance between upfront EV costs versus fuel savings. It shows the shift in maintenance needs fewer oil changes, more focus on batteries and software. It tells you where regulations, incentives, and the tech itself are likely going.
So if you're in the industry, what's the takeaway?
Keep an eye on it. Watch for EV-related job opportunities, maybe in maintenance or logistics support for these fleets. If you're thinking about equipment, maybe hybrids become more interesting. And definitely stay aware of any tax breaks or state incentives related to EVs.
You don't have to love them, but you gotta pay attention.
Pretty much. The folks who adapt first often find the new opportunities in these shifts.
Okay, that's all about being proactive and informed, which is a perfect lead-in to our last segment, protecting your future beyond the wheel. And sometimes, sadly, that means protecting yourself from shady operators. We've got a real cautionary tale out of Texas.
Yeah, this one's pretty rough. It raises that critical question.
Yeah.
In this huge, complex industry, how do you, as an individual driver, protect yourself from the bad actors? How do you ensure your own safety and stability?
So what happened in Texas?
There was this guy, Shaquan Jelks.
Yeah.
Allegedly, he ran multiple trucking companies completely illegally. Unlicensed, uninsured, the works. He even apparently defrauded the government, getting PPP loans and those pandemic relief loans for these sham companies.
Wow. And he kept operating even after being shut down.
Reportedly, yes. And here's the tragic part. In 2022, one of the drivers working for one of his companies, a company already flagged by the FMCSA as an imminent hazard, meaning it shouldn't have been operating at all, was killed in a crash while hauling steel pipes.
Oh, that's awful. Just infuriating. What happened to jokes?
Well, the feds finally caught up. By June 2025, he was indicted on almost 20 criminal charges:
Mm.
conspiracy, making false statements, obstruction of justice, even witness tampering. A whole alphabet soup of agencies involved: FMCSA, DOTOIG, FBI, DOJ.
Good. But what's the reaction from other truckers been?
Outrage, mostly,
Yeah.
and frustration about what feels like uneven enforcement. You hear drivers say things like, I get dinged for a minor logbook error, and this guy runs illegal companies for years, putting lives at risk.
Yeah, I can understand that feeling.
There are definitely calls for stricter rules around getting a DOT number, better background checks, more transparency so drivers can see who they're really working for.
So what's the lesson here for every driver listening?
It's a stark reminder. Always vet the company you're driving for.
Mhm.
Don't just take their word for it. Look up their DOT number. Check their safety rating on the FMCSA site. If something feels off, if it seems too good to be true, or just plain shady, it probably is.
Trust your gut.
Trust your gut and do your homework. The rules are supposed to apply to everyone. And this case also really highlights why having backup plans, having options is so important. So you're never forced to work for someone sketchy just to make ends meet.
That's a powerful point. And it ties right back into what we were saying about taking control, empowering your own future, managing your time, not just for the load, but for yourself.
Exactly. This connects everything we've talked about: the fast tech changes, the policy shifts, the rumors, even these dangerous operators. All of it points to the need for drivers to build their own resilience, their own control.
And this is where that message from Hervey and LifeSaveTrucker.com really resonates, isn't it? That the answer to the pain and suffering sometimes felt in trucking is finding ways to get out on your terms.
That's the core idea: building a future that gives you more freedom, more security, whether that's within trucking or preparing for something beyond it.
So this is truly about taking charge of your own destiny then. Seeing these industry challenges not just as threats, but maybe as motivation to build something solid for yourself.
Precisely. The strategies mentioned in the sources focus on things like learning how to use AI, not just for driving, but maybe to create extra income streams.
Online income specifically.
Yeah, building recurring month after month online income. Think of it like a personal safety net, a buffer against those wild swings in freight rates or economic downturns.
That makes a lot of sense. So it helps you decide when you want to retire, not when the industry or some company decides for you. And it cushions the blow if, your main trucking gig disappears unexpectedly.
Absolutely. It fundamentally shifts the focus.
Yeah.
It's about managing your time, yes, but not just for the shippers and brokers. Managing time for yourself. Using that downtime, that off-duty time, wisely. Learning new skills, building those online income streams, investing in your future.
Investing in yourself. That's key. And if folks listening want to explore that more, where can they go?
Well, the sources point to retirefromtrucking.com. They apparently have a free guide and training focused on using AI tools specifically for this preparing for retirement, building income both on and off the road.
Okay, good resource. And for more general trucking talk and community.
Lifeasatrucker.com is mentioned as a place for that real deal conversation, connecting with other drivers facing the same stuff.
Excellent. So it really boils down to this question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
In a world where the road ahead is always changing, how are you, the driver listening right now, preparing your own personal deep dive? How are you exploring new skills, new opportunities, making sure your journey isn't just about the miles you log, but about the future you're building for yourself?
That's a powerful thought to leave folks with.
It really is. Look,
Yeah,
good luck.
right.
So all the drivers listening, remember this. You are respected. You are absolutely essential. Staying informed, being proactive, taking control where you can. That's how you stay ahead, how you feel supported in this always moving industry. Thanks so much for tuning into this deep dive. Stay safe out there.